Start your morning with insights and drive. It's the business sit down where ideas come alive. From boardrooms to breakthroughs, we cover it all. Of FS Business School, standing tall. Sit down, tune in, let the wisdom flow. Real talk, big moves, and the knowledge to grow. On your way to work, we're paving the way. The business sit down will set a blaze.
In this episode, we sit down with Dr. Chrizaan Grobbelaar, a financial expert and researcher specializing in gamification and retirement planning. We explore how game-like elements can make financial planning less daunting and more engaging, especially for millennials. From procrastination to building healthy financial habits. Dr. Grobbelaar shares insights on how gamification can revolutionize the way we prepare for our golden years. Whether you're a seasoned saver or just starting to think about your future, this episode will leave you inspired to level up your financial game. Explain what gamification is and how it applies to retirement planning.
In like leaderboards or points or levels, rewards, and you put it in a non-game like environment to make it easier for someone that finds it as a very difficult subject or as very tedious subject or boring, and then it makes it more interesting for them and motivate them to take part of it. But for retirement planning, the word personal finance, it's scary for someone. Most individuals, they feel anxiety or stress when they hear those words, and they try to take distance from their own finances. And where gamification can come in, it can help them set goals, do it in smaller chunks. Don't think of the big picture of saving for retirement as one big amount. So you can set smaller goals and use game elements like levels and take the basic knowledge and master that and go to a more in-depth knowledge and build yourself up in terms of knowledge. And then especially gamification is all about a goal setting. So you have to have a goal in mind, and then you work towards that by using more and more game elements to start to motivate you to do that.
That's very interesting. I wouldn't have thought that you can do gamification and link it to retirement planning, because I mean myself, retirement planning is at this stage not something you look forward to, especially if you think about all the tedious elements that come to it. Is there some examples of gamification technology that makes gamification more engaging for someone like me or most people that need to start focusing or putting a larger emphasis on retirement planning?
Are you asking about websites or apps and so forth? Or?
Apps, games, anything where gamification can make it a bit more engaging for someone like myself, for example?
Well, there is a lot of tools online available that financial companies make available, even banks. They give you the tools to calculate, let's say for instance, an installment on a car. So you fill in all the details and then it calculates it for you, and the same with installment for when you obtain a mortgage bond. So those tools are available. But for retirement planning, it's a bit difficult because the tools available currently, it focuses more on your day-to-day financing. It gives you budgets you can use for your day-to-day finance. But for retirement planning, there is a company, Alexander Forbes, they developed this online web-based tool where you can include all your finances, like your income, your expenses, all your assets you have, all the savings you currently have. And then they use that, and with the trend that you're currently saving, then they calculate for you a retirement picture. And that picture tells you how you can expect your retirement to be. Now that's one of the closest retirement tools I know of, but with my PhD we developed a retirement planning game, and in that game you have to play certain levels, and in that game the first thing you have to do is you have to choose your retirement goal, and there's a few retirement goals set out for them, and they can choose from the lowest goal to the highest goal, and whatever they choose they have to, during the levels, they have to save towards that goal. Now, we all working at an academic institution, we have pension funds. So that was also built into the game because the game was based on an academic institution with the employees working there. And in the game, they earn a salary. And that salary they have to use to pay expenses, and they have to choose between certain decisions that they are faced. So, like for instance, accommodation. Do they want to rather buy a place or rent a place? And if they choose to rent, what place do they want to rent? A more expensive place or a cheaper place? So they had to make daily financial decisions within the game, but at the same time, they also had to try and save for their retirement. So the pension fund was an automatic deduction from their salary. So that was a saving on its own. But then they had to do extra things within the game to save in addition to for their retirement. So those decisions they had to make. So that is what I've developed within the PhD study. So, but other technology I'm not really aware of.
How does gamification address common challenges like financial stress, procrastination when it comes to financial planning for retirement?
You have to, when you set your goals, and you can try and use an app, and on that app you can, when you set your goals, it sends you constant notifications and reminders to say, but you have to remember to update your budget. Because if you have a budget in place, you know exactly what comes in, what goes out, and if you have any additional money available during the year or during the month or week that you set it up for. So that is like a guidance for you, but it also, with the app's notification, it constantly reminds you of you haven't saved anything yet this month. So whatever you have saved, you also have to include it in the app and then keep it updated so that the app know how far you are from your goal.
Now, I've got a question. Speaking of, if I think about gamification, I normally think of our generation, most of the millennials, because we grew up with computers, etc. Does gamification have a larger audience with millennials and the generations after us? Or is there generations like our parents, for example, who's baby boomers, who gamification would work for? Or is it only a millennial and later technology that will help them?
I don't think gamification is just for a specific generation. Yes, it speaks gaming, and that's the millennial generation. They grew up with it. But gamification is actually very incorporated. It's already incorporated into our daily lives. We just don't realize it. If you think of, for instance, this game, the benefits card you have, that is a form of gamification. If you go to the gym 5 times in a row in a week in succession, then they give you a free smoothie. That's also a type of gamification. It's an element that motivates you to do something again and again and again. So that's what the apps or platforms that you have to use in order to plan for retirement, that's what it should do. So it should constantly remind you of doing something, and then your goal, your reward that you will receive. We may not feel it now because we think it's a distant event. So, but that's why you have to set short-term goals. Even for the older generations, it's important for them to have that short-term goals in mind and not think of the bigger goal of where they want to end up when they reach retirement. So for the older generation, I would say they may not know the term gamification, but it's not new. So it must be explained to them in simpler words, and try to let them break down their goals in smaller goals and give them guidance on how to achieve those goals.
You just referenced companies like Deskem and etc. using gamification. Do you think or do you think financial literacy in the country would improve if more companies like, let's say, Standard Bank and other companies start placing a greater emphasis on gamification to advance retirement literacy, financial literacy, or financial planning?
I think definitely so. The trend currently is financial institutions like Standard Bank and so forth, they each are doing their own thing. So they have their own tools that they make available to their clients. But imagine if all of the financial institutions in South Africa grouped together and build a platform where they incorporate gamification so that any individual, not just a specific industry, or like with a game that I developed that was very basic, that only focused on employees at an academic institution. But if it focused on any person and they built from there on the basics of what you should know for financial literacy and let them expand on that. And if they mastered a certain level of knowledge, that they can continue to a more in-depth knowledge and not just think retirement as a whole, but think of the different legs that you have to follow in order to reach that goal in total. Because you can have a pension fund, you can invest in property, you can invest in stocks, you can do it on various other ways, just a normal savings account. But for the individual to learn the different ways to save for retirement and how to get there, and that it's not as difficult as one think in your head if you hear the word personal finance, but that they make it more, that they explain it in a more simpler way. And if they can build something like that as a whole, and all institutions take hands and work on this project, I think it would do tremendous. It will result in a tremendous changes in retirement planning and the ability of people to be able to retire. So currently, 6% of South Africans reaching retirement can retire comfortably. The rest, they have to rely on family or the government. The statistics says that 75% of retirees in South Africa, they rely on an old age grant from the government. Now you have to think, but there's so many people that have pension funds. Can't they do that? Don't they have enough? So you think if you have a pension fund, you're sorted. But that's not the case. So you have to make an effort to save in additional savings, not just rely on your pension fund.
How can someone who's never thought about retirement start using something like gamification, or use gamification in some sense of the word, to start planning for their retirement? Is there, for example, if I go to PwC or whoever, can I go to them and say, listen, I want to do or use gamification to help me plan for my retirement? Or is gamification at this stage not at the level that normal people like myself can go to any institution and say, listen, I'd like to use gamification to help motivate me to save for my retirement?
I don't think it's incorporated in companies like on that level. So if you want to do it on your own, then you have to first know what is gamification and understand how can you bring gamification together with retirement planning, or if you want to do your taxes, or it's all about goal setting. You have to have a goal. If there's no goal, then you don't know how to go forward, and what are you reaching for, and what can you do on the way to motivate yourself. I'm thinking about my childhood days. We had remember the piggy bank we have always, and I think 30 years ago the banks gave out like this glow-in-the-dark T-Rex head that you can save money. I don't know if you remember that. I think it was Volkskas then.
Yeah.
But for me and my siblings, it was a race to see who can fill up their piggy bank with coins first. So, and that is a sense of a goal setting. You know your goal is filling up the piggy bank. But with bank accounts and savings accounts, we have lost that sense of awareness of knowing where our goal is and where we are at saving towards that goal. So we don't see that physical filling up the piggy bank anymore. We just see our bank account, what comes in goes out, but do we really have control over what comes in and what goes out, especially your expenses?
Yeah.
You just swipe your card. You just pick something off the shelf. You don't think twice about it. And very important is you have to pay yourself first when you get your salary. And by that, you have to set up a debit order from your account that it goes into a savings account. And even if you don't have a lot of money, just a little bit, but because that little bit earns interest. And if you do that from the earliest age possible, when you start working, or if you're a student, you won't have income, so it will be very difficult. But when you start working, the smallest amount possible, even if you have pension, save an extra amount, and that will earn interest. And that interest, next year, you will earn interest on the capital amount and the interest that you already have. So then it's like a compound effect, and then it will grow much faster. And by the time you reach retirement, you can make a tremendous change to the money that you will have available when you retire. As someone that only starts 10 years later because they think they don't have enough money now to start, so they will wait until they're in their 30s or 40s. But then it's too late, because you have to have at least 40 years of savings in order to have enough. That's just a guideline from professionals.
That's very scary. I've got a bit of a different question, speaking about retirement. Let's say we have someone listening, or a friend of mine or whoever, who's got kids who's still in kindergarten, and the friend realizes, like I would if I had kids, the importance of retirement. Is there, if let's say the whoever decides to take R5 from his kid's pocket money and save it in a savings account, would that also help with retirement in the sense that it compounds the same way, or should they rather look at something like an investment and place the quote-unquote pocket money into the investment account?
Well, I would first just mention that I'm not a financial advisor, a professional. So
Yes,
I cannot give you that advice.
No.
But if I think of what my financial advisor told me is, for children, it's important, if you want to start saving for them, choose a tax-free savings account and let them start saving in that manner. So that would be a good suggestion, because he suggested it to me.
Now, the reason I'm asking this is because we spoke about financial literacy a bit earlier, and while we were speaking and everything, I just realized the importance, especially for kids from a young age, learning financial literacy, and I believe teaching them from a small age, saying, listen, always put a bit away. I've got another question for you. Let's say retirement was a video game, because I mean, gamification, you always think about video games. What would be the boss level, the final level, if gamification was a game? What would you say would be the boss level version of it?
Well, the boss level would be if you enter retirement and you have to make do with whatever you have saved. Because while you're working, you can save, but when you enter retirement, you have no longer any salary that comes in. You have to use what you have saved by then. And then you have to pay any retirement cost you will have. And if there's unexpected life events, you are in a car accident and there's tremendous cost involved in that, and you didn't save for that, then you are going to lose in that level. So the winning phase would be if you reach that retirement level and you are financially independent and you saved enough to cover your normal expenses and plan for any unexpected things to happen.
My very last question, during your research, did financial planning for retirement, everything over the years, if we look at our grandparents versus our parents versus millennials versus down the generational stream, did the financial planning or planning for retirement decrease as we went from one generation to the next? Did it increase? Did it stay the same?
If you say financial planning, do you mean that individuals actually plan for retirement?
Planning for retirement. Because earlier you spoke about where you said about 6% of the people are ready for retirement. When they get to retirement, they are financially in a position where they can retire.
2 or 3 decades ago, the type of pension fund that was offered to people, it changed. So in the earlier days, it was your pension was the employer was responsible for putting the money aside for you. So by the time you retire, you are certain of a certain amount of money. So they promise you a certain amount of money according to your salary. It's like a formula they calculated. So they were responsible, and they carried the sole responsibility of doing that. But then the pension fund system changed, and now with the pension fund contribution system, you as the employee has to save towards your own retirement. The employer can choose to make a contribution if they want to, but the sole responsibility lies now on the employee. So I think in the older days, the people relied on the employer. They had to make sure I have enough funds by when the time I leave the company. And especially if you spend a very long career at that company, then you had a very good retirement plan. So now it's a responsibility of the employee, and they now have to take over the responsibility. And I don't think it's a matter of it decreased. It's just the responsibility shifted now. And now we are suddenly expected to plan for something, and we don't have the knowledge on that. And financial management, for planning, it's a complex subject. And we don't always have that knowledge. And if we don't have that knowledge, we tend to take a step back and say, but I don't know how, so I'm going to ignore it. And that's the biggest mistake one can make.
That's the problem, sticking your head in the ground. Thank you very, very much for your time. I appreciate it a lot. I hope our listeners found it as interesting as I did. I, for one, need to seriously start reconsidering my financial planning for my retirement. Hopefully we can have a conversation like this again down the line. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Start your morning with insights.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, share this with friends and family, and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
From boardrooms to breakthroughs, we cover it all.